Well, good morning. Election Day is just about a month away. Are you ready? Today we start a series of shows designed to help you to get to know the candidates running for the Michigan House of Representatives. It starts right now.
From TV6, this is The Ryan Report. Here's your host, Don Ryan.
Well, there are 3 state house races in the central and western Upper Peninsula, and today we're going to meet the candidates vying to represent the 110th district, which includes all of Baraga, Gogebic, Houghton, Iron, Keweenaw, and Ontonagon counties, plus Ishpeming and Powell Township in Marquette County. Of the 3 races, the 110th is the only open seat, since incumbent Scott Dianda is term limited and running for the state senate this term. This morning we're going to meet the candidates who would like to replace Representative Dianda. The Democratic candidate is Ken Summers, and his Republican opponent is Greg Markinen. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having us.
Nice to have you with us. You know, first of all, I think we want to give people a chance to get to know you a little better. And rather than my kind of cherry picking your resumes, let me just give each of you a chance to tell us a little bit who you are. I know you're from Lawrence, and I know you left the area for a while to become a commodities trader. But what about the rest of your life? What's going on?
Well, as you mentioned, I was born and raised in Lawrence. Most of my family worked at the Celotex ceiling tile factory, even myself, to put myself through Northern Michigan University here in Marquette. Went down to Chicago for 10 years and came back to give the commencement speech at Lawrence High School. And when I was giving that speech and telling those graduates, I decided I should take some of that sage advice. And within 3 months, I had my family move back to Lawrence, and so that I could raise my son where I think is the best place in the world to raise a family, which is right there in Baraga County.
Okay. And Greg, I know you're from Hancock, and
Yes.
you're a teacher. Tell us some more about you.
Well, I'm a teacher at Baraga High School for the past 5 years. Previous to that, I taught at the Copper Country ISD in Hancock, and I've also taught as an adjunct instructor at Gogebic Community College. So I have that experience. I also have 26 years in the military on active reserve and National Guard. I've served on the Hancock City Council, serving Ward 2, and I've also served in the Copper Country AmeriCorps program for 2 years as well.
I note from your resume you attended both Michigan Tech and Northern.
Yeah,
So
I have a degree.
You cheer for the Wildcats or the Huskies?
Yeah, it depends on if they're playing football or hockey.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, let's talk a little bit about why you're running. Why did you decide to run for this position?
Well, I've been blessed with the honor of serving as a school teacher, entrusted with the children K through 12, and then community college. I've served my country in the military. I'd like to serve my state as well in the 110th district. Representing this huge district that we're in.
Okay. And Ken, why did you decide to get involved here?
You know, I have an almost 8-year-old son, and I decided that we have to make our state, our district, our country a better place for him to live in 20 years down the road. And my wife and I, over in Baraga County, there's a board or a committee over there, school board, Chamber of Commerce, Community Foundation. Her and I have probably sat on one or the other. And we've found a way to help so many people there in Baraga County that I think it's important that we move on and are able to help the 90,000 people in the Western UP.
Okay. Let's talk about the issues in this campaign. What do you see as the primary issues?
The primary issues for me is I think our society should be judged not on how well the stock market's doing or the 401k balance, but really how healthy we are, how educated we are, and that's really important. So healthcare, education, and then our country's getting older. Our infrastructure, our bridges and roadways aren't as good as they could be. So healthcare, education, and infrastructure are my three main areas that
and
I'd
we'll
like
talk
to concentrate on.
about each of those some more.
Absolutely.
Greg, what do you think are the key issues?
Well, we've knocked on quite a few doors as well as Ken has, but the issue that keeps coming up is auto insurance. We need a reform in auto insurance. We have people in Gogebic County and Iron County crossing the border, getting insurance in Wisconsin because it's cheaper. People are paying way too much for this catastrophic clause. We need a fee schedule in there. We just need to save people money, and we have a plan. The Republicans have a plan to save upwards of 40% on our auto insurance, hopefully with the next legislative session in January. I agree with Ken, education needs to be reformed. I think we need to take vocational education a step further. We need to start as early as 9th grade and start giving students an opportunity to do some job shadowing and explore some more career opportunities and allow them to pursue that if they choose to do so.
Okay. Again, we'll talk about some of those in more detail. You know, one thing about being from the Upper Peninsula, being a legislator from the Upper Peninsula, traditionally they've pretty well worked together with their colleagues in Lansing from the Upper Peninsula.
Right.
Do you feel that's something you would be able to do?
Well, I like to look at John Kivala's record. John Kivala, of course, was the 109th here, and he worked across the aisle. He didn't care if you were a Republican or a Democrat. If it was good for the UP, he worked towards it with the rest of the UP legislatures. So I look at him as a mentor for when I get into office.
Okay. And Ken, your thoughts on that subject?
Yeah, the truth is that there's only 3.5 legislators from the UP, right? And then a state senator. If we want to get anything done, we have to work together, but we also have to form coalitions and find things that either the Democrats down near the Detroit area would like, that we also want, or rural Republicans from the northern part of the Lower Peninsula that share our same needs. So in order to work together, we have to build those coalitions. And a day after the primary, one of the Republicans that lost, I gave a phone call to, because I believe that he wants what's best for the UP. And I said, I don't care where the good idea comes from. If you have one, here's my cell phone number, give me a call, because it really is about doing what's best for the UP.
And most legislators tell me they do want to do that, but there's a lot of pressure when you get to Lansing to be part of your party's caucus. What are your thoughts there? Do you think you can still be independent?
Absolutely. If you're a state legislator, you need to have the will to do what's right for the people that you represent. I actually spoke with some legislators down there because that was a concern of mine. And I said, I'm going to vote my district. And I'm going to always vote my district. And they're going to have to deal with that.
And you'll be facing the same situation, Greg, at least at the present time. Republicans are in control.
Absolutely.
Do you feel you can be independent when it's important for
Well, the
region?
Republicans have a Northern Michigan coalition already, and they're working with Sarah Kemblenzi. They're working together, and like Ken said, you have to work across the aisle. You have to do what's best for the UP.
Okay. Thanks
So,
very much.
yeah.
We'll have some more thoughts for you after we return after this break for a couple of minutes. We're talking this morning with the candidates in the 110th State House District. On my left is Ken Summers. On my right is Greg Markkanen. Let's talk a little bit about jobs, because that's always important to the Upper Peninsula. Greg, what are your thoughts on creating jobs and economic development here in the UP?
Well, I think it's important to look at each community's needs, and I think it's the job of a representative to be the facilitator to help bring all the parties together. Each community knows what they need. I think the 110th district rep needs to bring the parties together and be their voice in Lansing. I think Baraga County, Ontonagon County, they all have unique needs. They have projects going on in the making, and the state representative needs to be that facilitator and be their voice in Lansing to help facilitate anything that they need from the state.
Okay. And Ken, what are your thoughts on creating jobs up here?
My thought is that a lot of politicians talk about jobs, and they have really no idea how to create them. They just know, the voters like to hear about them. But there's projects going on out north of Wakefield. There's some projects in Ontonagon happening, and it's the responsibility of the state of Michigan not to make those projects happen, but to facilitate the infrastructure needs that they may need. Do we need to dredge a river basin? Do we need to replace the rail so that they can operate? It's important that the state of Michigan doesn't stand in the way of progress.
Okay. Historically, the natural resource industries have been very important to this region. Now we're talking about the possible reopening of the Empire Mine. There are copper developments in the copper country, North 40 project down in Menominee. Forests are still part of our industry. Do Do you support the concept of utilizing the region's natural resources?
Absolutely. These are anchor industries, basically, for the Western UP. I am in full support of reopening the Empire Mine, and especially our forest products industry. It creates all sorts of ancillary jobs throughout the communities. That being said, we need to make sure that we have a DEQ that the people of Michigan can trust, and we do the right thing and we're stewards of our environment, but there's no reason why we can't use sustainable products and sustainable industry practices, especially in the forest products industry.
And Greg, your thoughts on the natural resource industry?
We have to use our, obviously we have to use our natural resources wisely, but we have to also not drive businesses away either. We have to keep regulations in a practical manner. We can't over-regulate and we can't overtax, but we still need to facilitate the community and provide those jobs and employment for the local people.
Education is a big subject, and it's probably going to have to take a break before we get finished with it, but let's start with the universities. You have universities in your district, Michigan Tech, and others here in the Upper Peninsula. Are we doing enough to support higher education?
Well, I think we could always do a better job. I think, you know, the universities have to be, you know, financially, you know, watch their budgets, keep their budgets low, keep tuition at a minimum for students. I see university tuition going up and up and up, and you know, it's driving a lot of students away, staying away from a university education. And I think we need to support Beta Knock. We need to support Gogebic Community College. We need to support, you know, the trade vocational education focus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ken, your thoughts on support for higher education?
So when it comes to higher education, I know in the 90s when I graduated from college, you could go to college for maybe $2,400 a year. The funding mechanism is switched around, where the state of Michigan with our public universities accounted for maybe 75% and the tuition was 25%. That's flipped on its head. Now students are responsible for 75% and the public university gets 25%. It's ridiculous that we're making money off the backs of children, to be honest with you. I envision possibly a state bank where we could give out loans for 1% or a little 0.5% over what the going rate is on the market versus the 5-6% rates that private for-profit businesses are currently charging our young people.
Okay, I have some more questions about education and other subjects. We'll get to those in just a couple of minutes after we take this break. Again, we're talking with Ken Summers, the Democratic candidate for the 110th District, and Greg Markkanen, Republican candidate. Let's talk about K-12 education. Are we doing the right thing there? Could the state of Michigan be doing more?
The state of Michigan could definitely be doing more. Currently, we're on a per pupil funding mechanism, and we get about $7,600 to $7,800 per pupil. And that really hurts our rural school districts where our population has fallen and we don't have as many students per district. You know, they're telling us that it costs $9,200 to educate a child. And that's not including our long bus routes here in the UP and our colder than average heating days. And I believe it's about $14,000 to educate a child with special needs. So, you know, right now we're funding education on a per pupil model that was designed back in the 90s, 25 years ago, and I think it's time to come into the next century and fund education appropriately.
Okay. Greg, what are your thoughts on what we're doing for education?
Well, I think funding needs to be increased, obviously, but I think we need to look at standardized testing. I think we need to put more control on our local school boards and give teachers more control with standardized testing. They're assessing their students on a daily basis, and if they need to do remedial work, they're the ones that need to know, or they know and they can prioritize. I think there's just too much of an emphasis on standardized testing. We've looked at other models around the world, and you know, other countries are doing a better job at education than we are, spending a lot less money. So I'd like to have more local control in the school boards and enable teachers to have more control over their classroom.
There's an issue that a lot of people are concerned about, and it's an issue that TV6 is taking a great interest in, and that's school safety. What do you think, what would you suggest we do to make our schools safer?
Well, as you know, as a veteran and an outdoorsman, and I'm torn on that issue. We've talked many times in my classroom about it. I've talked with my colleagues about it. School safety obviously is on the mind of every teacher, every parent throughout the country. And you know, we're very fortunate in Baraga, at Baraga area schools and throughout Baraga County to have a very good tribal police force, the village police force. We have the state police there, and they circulate throughout the school, come into school in the morning, show a presence. You know, the students know most of them. But you know, as far as teachers carrying guns, I'm really torn on that issue. I feel it would change the whole dynamic in the classroom with students. And you know, while we need security and we need to be tough on that, you know, personally, I wouldn't feel comfortable, you know, carrying in the classroom.
Okay, and Kenton, what are your thoughts on school safety?
You know, I believe this is a 20-year problem in the making. You know, we've taken the counselors out, the nurses out of our schools. The students right now don't feel like they have a path to the middle class or a path to prosperity. You know, 30 years ago you could graduate with that piece of paper and go down to the local factory and make a livable wage and raise a family. Right now, we're not giving them that opportunity. So I envision a program, a multi-track program in the school system where we start educating people and we create plumbers, we create pipe fitters, nurse anesthetists, hairstylists, anything that they can go out and actually earn a livable wage and have a path to the middle class that they can envision.
Okay, time is rapidly running out, so I'm going to ask each of you about 30 seconds about what do we do with our road and infrastructure problems in Michigan.
You know, our roads and our infrastructure got a D- to a D+ on the last engineering study that they did. That is just unacceptable. You know, we've kicked this can down the road for way too long. And when we talk about bridges and roadways, we also need to be talking about broadband and things that are going to propel us into the 21st century.
Okay. Greg, what are your thoughts on what we do about the roads and infrastructure in the state?
Well, I think, you know, Michigan is one of, I believe 2 states that has one of the highest taxes on gasoline, but only 21 cents, 24 cents of that goes to the road fund. The rest of the taxes go to the general fund, and we really need to divert the sales tax money back into the roads so we can, you know, when you buy a gallon of gas, when you drive on the highways, you can be rest assured that your tax money that you're paying on that gallon of gas is going for roads and infrastructure.
Okay. We'll be back with some other thoughts for you after we take one more break. Once again, we're talking with the candidates in the 110th State House District. I thought at this time we could give each of the candidates a chance to appeal to you for your vote. So this is their opportunity to tell us what they think they can do for us in Lansing. Greg, let's see, what did we decide? We'll start with you.
Okay.
Ken.
Absolutely. So I'm doing this, as I said, to make a better UP, better state of Michigan, better country for my son and your children and your grandchildren. It's imperative that we move Michigan forward, and I can't see any other reason that we don't invest in education, invest in healthcare, invest in our infrastructure, and that's how we're going to move this country forward. So on November 6th, I ask for your vote and your support.
Okay. And Greg,
Thank
what
you.
do you have to say for us?
It comes down to, you know, who the voters want to trust. You know, neither one of us, Ken or I, have legislative experience, but you know, it comes down to who's more invested in their community, who the voters are going to trust in Lansing. We want to keep Michigan moving forward, keep unemployment low. We want to work on infrastructure, work on education. We want to work across the aisle. And you know, come November, I think it's a clear choice. We've had quite a few years of good growth here. Unemployment is low. I looked at the paper in Gogebic County at the Globe this weekend. Unemployment in Gogebic County is at an all-time low. So we want to keep that moving forward. And I would humbly ask the voters for their support on November 6th. Thank you.
So it's a big election coming up on November 6th. There will be all of the State House of Representatives will be up for election. The State Senate is up for election. We have a race for governor and a very key State Senate race here in the Upper Peninsula, and many other races as well. So make sure you're prepared and continue to watch TV6, and you can be prepared to vote intelligently and with a vote that matches your political persuasion on November 6th. I'll be back with a final thought for you in just a minute. Well, that's our report for this morning. I want to remind you that if you want to watch again or recommend to someone else that they watch this show, it will be available at uppermichigansource.com. Today's program will be available starting tomorrow afternoon. Actually, it's available on live stream throughout much of today. Thanks to Ken Summers and Greg Markinen for joining us today as we looked at the race in the 110th District. Next week, our focus will be on the 108th District race in Delta, Dickinson, and Menominee counties, here on Upper Michigan's Election Source. Thank you for joining us. I hope we can look forward to seeing you again next Sunday morning.